What other mistakes can you help our listeners avoid? So let's say through the course of this conversation, we've got somebody who thought, subscriptions were just for software companies and media companies. And now they're like, you know what, well, maybe hearing Robbie, like maybe I could create something of ongoing value that people need. And they've kind of done their segmentation. So they think that there's this kind of like segment they can go after. What mistakes would you coach them to avoid that you see new people in this kind of space make all the time?
All the time. So the first thing is, don't just slap a subscription price on your products exactly the way they are, right? A subscription is a pricing decision. Membership really involves a mindset where you're treating the customer like a member and you're committing to a long-term ongoing relationship with them. So that's the first thing. You have to know who you're having that relationship with, as we discussed. So, it's not for everybody. You probably want to start with a small and important segment. Usually it's your best customers, it's your lightest or newest customers, or it's a really weird segment that behaves differently than everybody else. But know who you're designing for. I think that's a second mistake. I think a lot of organizations, once they get their subscription model going, they over-index either on acquisition, so people sign up for it but then don't use it and then cancel, or they over-index on retention but don't bring in new customers. So you think about like the gym or the newspaper or the country club, where they're like, everybody that's a member loves us, but nobody wants to join. And the reason is usually that they've stopped innovating. They've stopped understanding what the market options are for a new customer. And so nobody who's considering options thinks this option is very good. But the people who are already members aren't looking for alternatives. And so it feels like they're loyal, but really it's just inertia.
Interesting. What other reasons do people stop subscribing or cancel their membership? Or, what do you see as the reason people churn?
So people often churn when a bad thing happens and it's not handled well. So I worked with a streaming company in Europe, and they were really angry at their retention team, but it turned out that most of the people who had canceled the day of or the day after a major soccer tournament that was supposed to be streaming on their channel. They'd lost the connection for 10 minutes. So you can think of all of these, people, these soccer fanatics, all, having all their friends over, and then, the game, doesn't come through. They all canceled. So that's the first thing, like a technical issue, a glitch that isn't handled properly. Another reason is people don't use it. So a leading indicator of churn or retention is usage. So you have a product, nobody's using it, they're going to cancel eventually. Maybe not today, but they will. So you want to, if somebody that was using, if somebody's coming to your gym 3 times a week and now they're not coming, they're probably going to cancel. So you need to figure out what's going on there.
Robbie, what about people who are like sleeping at the wheel? So let's imagine you've got a $9 a month subscription. Tucker Carlson's got his new, I read something about he's coming up with a new subscription. It's going to be $9 a month. Okay, fine. So you opt in, you're all hot and bothered about the fact that somebody's got a new, it's $9. It's not a significant charge,
right?
But it goes on your card, and the first few months you use it avidly, and then you stop using it. Now you as the owner of that service can see their usage drop.
Yeah.
Right.
It happens all the time.
Yeah. And presumably the right thing to do is to get in there with your customer success people in the first couple of months and try to kind of stimulate usage and so forth. But let's imagine they have missed that window. And now that $9 a month charge is just kind of sitting there on that credit card. And they're worried that if they call that customer, they're going to wake the giant. And they're going to say, oh my gosh, I'd forgotten that I'd subscribe. You know what? Thanks for calling. Cancel.
Right.
What do you coach people when they've got a sleeping giant? Just leave them be until they realize?
There's a couple of things. So first of all, I'm a very kind of karma-oriented, positive person. So I can't imagine wanting to be running a business where the reason I make money is because people are getting no value and they keep meaning to cancel, but then they forget.
Sure. But if your kid's birthday party or your kid's dinner getting on the table is contingent on you running a company, You can have all the good karma in the world.
Here's the cold hard things. When people cancel, they'll often sue you. There's the FTC, all the Consumer Reports and the whatever, the Customer Better Business Bureau. They're full of lawsuits for people hiding the cancel button, making it hard to cancel. They will never come back. So a lot of subscription businesses actually do very good business when people leave and come back. It's a huge part, for example, of Netflix business, right? People leave because, I'm really busy, or I'm binging on HBO or whatever, and then they come back. And they don't refer you because they say, I used that. I never really used it. And then it was hard to cancel, and it's a waste of money. So you don't engender goodwill. The other thing that, I don't want to I don't want to scare anybody, but the FTC right now has a massive lawsuit with Amazon Prime for making it hard to cancel. And they also, just announced Adobe, who's always been, considered a really good actor in this space, is being probed for penalizing people for canceling early. So there's a lot of legal issues, but I have seen in the long term that hiding the cancel button, that's what we'll just call it, but letting sleeping dogs lie, hiding the cancel button works great for the next 2, 3, 4 months. It works for your kid's birthday this year. Next year, you run out of people, and you don't have any subscribers, because the other thing that I think is, to be noted is, if you have a product that people aren't using and you're attracting people who use your product for a month and then stop using it, you don't have a real subscription business. And so you want to take that as a clue to adjust the business and improve the offering and not attract people who aren't going to stay.
To go back to the issue at hand, though, if you've got somebody who's a sleeping dog on your subscription list, they haven't logged in 3 years, like what would you counsel that owner to do to re-engage them at the same time, minimize their chance of churn?
Okay, so the first thing is, before you even reach out to them, you should have a pretty good idea of what happened. Did they truly forget that they even had the subscription? Would they be a good customer? Could you win them back? Did your product change a lot in the last 3 years and now it's way more relevant? Do you have something new to share? A lot of times companies can, you can look at your list of customers and you can guess why they're not there anymore. So the first thing is, do you actually have a story? Do you think they're likely to stay? Sometimes people have a subscription for reasons other than usage. So, for example, museums, right? I'm a member of a museum in Washington, D.C. I live in California. Why? Because I believe in what they're doing, right? I believe what they're doing. And they could call me and say, Mrs. Baxter, you've been subscribing for 4 years and you haven't been to the museum since, 2017. I'm not going to cancel. But they probably know that there are people like me. They're like, oh, a person in California that has a membership, only come once, So I think it's important to understand it. I think a second thing is, do you need to remedy it? Do you need to have a different offer? And, then it's up to you. Like, you can you have no legal liability to tell them that they need to, to remind them. But if they cancel, there is a risk that they're going to be really angry. And so, you have to just know how your business responds to that and how big a risk it is. So I know, like, for example, a lot of newspapers, they actually keep raising the prices on their most loyal customers, because they say, people, once you decide what newspaper you're reading, you're not going to cancel. So you and I could live next door to each other, be a very similar customer profile. You could be paying $5 for 6 months as an intro fee, going up to $10 a month. And I could be paying $85 a month for the same subscription. And I've talked to them and they're like, look, they made the same argument you did. They're like, look, we're making money from it. So that's the problem of that consumer that's not paying attention.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So get to know the reason they might be a sleeping dog before you call them. Understand their usage pattern, and there may be underlying reasons that they are.
Yeah. So Netflix, it's interesting. Netflix has now said, if you haven't used your subscription in more than 11 months, they automatically cancel you.
Wow. Really?
They said we don't want sleeping dog revenue. We want revenue from people who use our product. They also introduced a lower priced subscription, which is interesting, which is their ad supported subscription, which is something when I was working with them 20 years ago, they said they would never do, but they've come around on advertising for, I think, good reasons. But they have always been, monthly only. They don't have an annual subscription that locks you in. And they always say, if you're not getting value, cancel. Every time they raise the price, they send out a letter. It says, we're raising the price. We think we give you great content. If you don't like it, you can cancel. Here's the button.
How often do you think people with a subscription model should be raising their price?